This episode of Pick Up the Six podcast is brought to you by our friends at Mud Gear. We have an awesome new partnership to tell you about, and we love Mud Gear because they're made tougher. Just like you guys, it's outdoor gear for the outdoor athlete. You can get it dirty, you can sweat in it, it's all good, and I absolutely love it. If you go to my Instagram, you'll see me rocking Mud Gear shirts and shorts on that Blue Ridge relay, and it performed really, really well. We've got a great deal going for our listeners. You go to mudgear.com, you use the code PUT6, that's the number 6, PUT and the number 6, and you're saving 15% off today. Great shirts, great shorts, awesome socks. They've got a bunch of different kinds of socks. They've got full knee-high socks for compression. They've got running socks. They've got mountain biking socks. They've got rucking socks. It's all good. Go pick it up today. It's made tougher. It's Mud Gear, and it's 15% off at mudgear.com using the code PUT6. Go get after it, pick up some of their stuff, and help support a great company that we love to partner with. Edgar Mills from Osprey Shooting Solutions joins the show today to talk about his service in the 10th Special Forces Group and how he's building on his experience leading the SOCOM Marksmanship Program to help equip everyone from new shooters and firearm owners to seasoned professionals to become safer, more competent, and more confident shooters. I really enjoyed this conversation because we get to talk to a pretty cool guy who's super humble and dedicated to his life mission at the same time. This is Pick Up the Six podcast. Brian Jodas back once again for another episode of Pick Up the Six podcast. I've got Edgar Mills joining me, my brother. It's good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
I'm too. This is the fun world of connections, right? And our buddy, fast friend of the show, the trail trash dirtbag, Justin Sheely, was like, I got a guy for you. He said, Edgar Mills of Osprey Shooting Solutions. I was like, bro, I'm already following him. Absolutely. Love what he's doing. And so here we are. That's what brings us together today. It's always good.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, Justin's a great guy. He's always connecting people. He's got a job, right? Where he's very successful.
I think he's a pretty successful human being.
But he works harder connecting people to do things like this.
Yeah.
He's always on, man. Always.
You know, it's what I refer to as the D2X, which is where you're doing what you were born to do for those you were born to serve. And I think that's sort of his sweet spot. For you, that's sort of the second evolution of your career through Osprey Shooting Solutions. But before that, man, life in the Army, 10th Special Forces Group. So let's just get to meet Edgar Mills a little bit. Tell us a little bit about, man, growing up, and when did you know you wanted to be in the Army? How'd that all shake out for you?
Oh, man, I was a G.I. Joe kid. You know what I mean? Yeah. Really. When I was very young, I had an uncle who was in Vietnam. He was a Green Beret in Vietnam. I never met him. He died in 1967. But there were pictures all over the house, right? Big, giant 3x2 pictures. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they were all of him and his Green Beret looking all, looking cool and stuff. So he was always like a figure in my head. So I joined the Army in 1991, and I'm colorblind. So I wasn't able to do what I wanted to do. So I did the shortest enlistment and got out. While I was out, I was a bicycle messenger in Atlanta and a bouncer for 4 years. Living the carefree lifestyle. I was incredibly fit, riding a bike every day. But I had a son. And you can't be a bike messenger and support a family. So I went back in the Army, except this time around, I was a little older and knew some tricks. So I was able to go to the infantry, which is what I wanted to do originally. Messed around there, went to selection, in 98. Had a security clearance issue, and then got that fixed and went to the Q course in 03, where I became a Green Beret, which is the best job in the Army.
We've been very fortunate to grow close with and talk to quite a few times. My good friend Lowell Coppert, Green Beret, he's the guy, if you guys listening remember, and Edgar, if you don't know him, you're in the state of South Carolina today. He lives in South Carolina, recently petitioned and got moved a Vietnam Veterans Memorial in his hometown of Aiken, South Carolina, that quite frankly had gotten left behind and was forgot about. And he got to move to a more prominent and a safer part of town where people could actually see it. It was yeoman's effort to get that done. It took state legislation, because now you're talking about moving a war monument, right?
Madness.
But just a pleasure, man. And you know what I've grown to learn from him, and even just talking to you, is just this sort of humbleness about the guys that go through that Q school, at least the guys that I've met and talked to and spent some time with, because you sort of just drop it in there and just talk about it like it's not a big deal, but it's a big deal.
Yeah.
Listen,
most of the guys, hey, there's no shortage of arrogant dudes in SF. I mean, really, but most of the guys, I mean, once you're there, it's not a big deal. At work every day, I mean, it's just a bunch of regular dudes. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you would have taken a slightly different path as a youth, you could have been a Green Beret. You know, it's just you know, it's a job. It's where some guys do it. You know.
What did you learn about yourself going through that selection process? Because I know it's incredibly lengthy, arduous, long amount of time. A lot of time, if I'm not mistaken, sort of by yourself as you're going through parts of that evolution, right? What'd you learn?
The selection process is shorter. The Q course itself is long, but when I went, you know, I think I was in my late 20s when I went to selection, and it was challenging for me, man, physically. But I was coming from the 82nd Airborne Division, mm-hmm. So my motivation was don't go back to the 82nd Airborne Division. But yeah, it was physically challenging, man. Like, and in the 90s, everybody's a dang CrossFit athlete these days. Like, everybody's an athlete, like professional level athlete.
Sure. Everybody's an ambassador or a sponsor for a product or something.
Yeah. In the 90s, there was fit guys, but they weren't athletes. They were just
it was like guys. How much you bench, how much you deadlift. Maybe that was it. Like, how strong are you?
Yeah. And the evolution of fitness was still coming along then too, you know? So, but literal, you know, days and days and days with a big heavy ruck on your back, you know, it's all about the motivation though. Cause not anybody could do it. I guess if anybody could do it, anybody would, but like, it was just physically hard. This is a big gut check. That's what selection is, big gut check. And it kind of tests your ability to interact with other humans when you're under extreme stress.
Yeah. High stress, low vis, right? How do you react during those moments?
But in selection, it's all about the physical stress. You see guys bicker, you know, argue and complain and moan and groan. But good guys just suck it up, help their homies out and keep moving on. So yeah, it's pretty good. I don't know necessarily what I learned about myself. I'm always learning stuff about myself every day. But that's what I wanted to be. And that was to me, the pinnacle of being in the military.
How much of that, when it's extremely, because it's just a physically challenging process, but how many guys quit because of what's going on between the years?
Oh man. Like probably of the pass rate, I can't remember what the total numbers were. We started out with about 200 and change, and we ended up with about 120. So probably half didn't get selected, and of that half that didn't get selected, probably more than that, probably 80 of those dudes quit. Some of it was physical, but the way selection was when I went through is you had no information of what was happening the next day. And that screwed with a lot of guys, man. Like not knowing what was coming next was a big problem for some dudes. Yeah. For me, I was just whatever. I read the whiteboard and do what it says do. But a lot of guys, you know, they get in their head, they try to war game what's coming up. And, you know, you wake up the next morning and they're gone because they'd sneak out in the middle of the night.
There's something in there about just being overly, maybe there's a few things. Maybe one is just, I'm just going to be ready and I'm just going to mentally deal with whatever they throw at us tomorrow. The other one is, and maybe you can't, maybe in that instance, you can't really be overly prepared because they're kind of preparing you for stuff for down the road. So it sounds like you're just like, no offense, fuck it. I'll just be ready for whatever they throw at me tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, let me give you, for example, you get measured on all the physical stuff, right? So the next morning you get up, the whiteboard might say, wear tennis shoes as opposed to boots.
Boots.
That's an indicator that you're going to go on a run. It might be a 12-mile run. It might be a 2-mile run. Unknown, right? And the cadre just said, okay, follow the path and do your best. Okay. So what if it's a 12-mile run? I need to pace myself. Or what if it's a 2-mile run? If I pace myself and now I'm slower than that. So that messes with people, Me, I had the fortunate benefit of not being a very good runner. I run the same pace no matter what the task is.
Yeah.
And plus, you get a homie. Like I was number 80 and my homie was number 79. And we just challenged each other.
Stick with your battle buddy and challenge each other.
Yeah. And me and him it worked out that we were about physically the same. So he'd be a little faster than me. I'd be a little faster than him. So we used each other as a metric. And then we would make a game out of trying to figure out who's going to quit next.
That's it, right? Just survive the next thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Like you hear those guys talk about, like, look, you can quit tomorrow. Just quit tomorrow. You want to quit, just quit tomorrow. I've heard a lot of guys say that. I mean, look, I got Nick Lavery's book over my shoulder, right? Guy lost his leg in combat. That guy could have quit in a hot second, laid it down. He just kept grinding. It's just not an option, I think, for some people. I think the difference is, and I know, look, you're a good man, super humble about it. I think the difference is there's just another layer of another ability of, I'm just not going to stop and I'll just keep going. Let me just get through this next part.
Yeah.
And maybe treating it like that.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. One piece at a time. You can try to overthink something to death. And psychology is a big deal, man. I mean, it gets in your head. So if you take that out of the equation and just, okay, I'm going to do what they say do next. So yeah, selection's not, a lot of guys quit, and I guess it is sort of a mental game. But a guy who had gone through previous to me, who I had been on a team with in the long-range surveillance detachment, I ran into him while I was in selection. He was in the Q course, and he did a shoulder brush on me because we weren't supposed to talk. And hey, man, just don't quit. That was it.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah, okay, just don't quit.
Roger that. Like, okay, cool.
Yep. Okay. So
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's fun, man. Civilians would probably pay big money to go do selection for like an experience.
They do.
I think they do.
Look, it's happening all the time now. Yeah, it's happening. You see it in the things you're doing. We see it through events like Go Ruck selection. Not the same, right? Things that we do. My F3 buddies and I do these events called Grow Ruck. I'm training for one right now, October 7th and 8th, whatever that Saturday is. We're going to spend 15 to 16 hours between 6 p.m. and whenever the hell they say we're done, 7, 8, 9 in the morning, going through an overnight in the dark, physically challenging fitness and leadership experience, right?
Yeah.
With platoon leaders and cadre and logs and rucks and all that sort of stuff. And look, it's not the same. It's not apples to apples for you guys preparing for when you're getting ready to go into combat, but there is something about wanting to put yourself into those moments of incredible uncomfortness, high stress, low vis, because you don't know what's going to come at you in life. And that dovetails very well into sort of our conversation about Osprey shooting solutions, what you're looking at there. Before we do that, you got to see the Army, the military in our world on both sides of 9/11, right?
Yep.
Pre, post. In that moment when all things changed, what was life like for you sort of after that? And did you just see a shift in pretty much everybody around you?
Yeah, for good and bad. And so pre 9/11, like especially during the Clinton years, it was kind of lean.
Mm-hmm.
And dudes were in the Army because they needed a job, or there was people that came in for family legacy, and there was noble reasons for people to join. College was one of the primary reasons a lot of people were pre 9/11. After 9/11, I saw an influx of, well, one, they lowered the standards for people. So there was a lot of guys with like maybe sketchy backgrounds or whatnot, but they came in for noble reasons. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
and literally there were guys who were lawyers and, financial advisors and political lobbyists and whatever else. It was like, you know what? I'm joining the Army. We're going to go do it. So you saw a lot of really genuinely good human beings come in to go do what they thought was the right thing to do. And it was awesome for that. And obviously there was an influx of budget. So, but
a lot of spending.
Yeah, a lot of spending. But the quality of people, even though the standards lowered a little bit because they wanted the numbers, you got a higher standard of people also in that mix. So it was pretty neat, man. It was a weird dynamic going on back in those days.
Yeah, I bet it was.
Yeah.
I bet it was. Part of your journey while stationed in Tampa was the program lead for SOCOM, the Marksmanship Program. I mean, how quickly did you realize in your career, I'm pretty good with a gun, right? I'm pretty good in this space. Was that something just sort of locked in for you? A ton of training, a little bit of both?
I'm still not 100% sure about all that, but I do have good training methodology. So that SOCOM job, it was like a side gig. I was the operations sergeant for the Senior Enlisted Academy down there, the Joint Special Operations Forces Senior Enlisted Academy, and that's the sergeant major course for soft guys. But honestly, that was not a full-time job. So I did the marksmanship program also, and we did. So there's a lot of people in SOCOM that deploy as onesies and twosies for odd tasks, and they go downrange and they'll hand them a gun and see you without any train up whatsoever. And a lot of the people at SOCOM are soft skill people. So me and my mentor Dan Bernard, who's down in Tampa, he's retired, but he runs a gun club down there. But he and I saw a need that these people need some formalized training, even if it's for 2 days or 3 days, to be able to protect themselves if they need to. So we did a 3-day course. We did a 2-day course. We did some big events for fun and commemoration and whatnot. So it was a good time. I went to SOCOM in lieu of going to SWIC, which is the schoolhouse for special forces. And being an E8 down there, I was one of the lowest ranking dudes walking around. There's a bunch of brass, a bunch of 1 stars and 2 stars cruising around and full birds. So I got such a weird perspective that I wasn't expecting to get on, guys who some are intellectuals and some think they're intellectuals. I took the SOCOM Enterprise Management course, which was an eye opener for me as far as the broader staff level stuff. So it was a good experience, man. But the marksmanship program was the highlight of my SOCOM time, for sure.
Yeah. Did you know that hey, once I'm out of the Army and once that sort of part of my life has come and gone, that's an area where you wanted to continue to provide service, provide counsel, right?
Well, I've been running my business since 2017 and I retired in 2020. It was a part-time gig. So teaching people to shoot is awesome. It's a passion. What I'm looking at right now, and actually me and Justin are milling over a project we're calling, you're familiar with the Junto, Ben Franklin's little club. We're milling over something in that vein, and I'm trying to figure out how to frame it into a 501c3 or C3 probably, to figure out how we can do charitable work in conjunction with training, because people don't associate firearms training with charities. Right. Like, we can raise money for something, we can do an event, and we will, and we have, but I want to be more productive in doing the charity piece of that. and we haven't got things ironed out 100%. I'm looking for counsel actually, so you can probably hit me offline.
Yeah, I got some ideas. Honestly, I have some ideas that we can
Yeah.
talk about when we're done.
One of
Because
my
I think there's a
passions-
lot of organizations that you might be able to come alongside and complement and provide
Yeah.
some services to in
Yeah.
that space. So yeah, for sure. I
Yeah.
love it.
Well, that's what we're still messing around with. It's very, very young in its lifespan here, but whatever I do, I want to do it with Justin.
Yeah, he's a good guy. All right, so tell me a little bit about what's going on at Osprey, and what you guys do there, and really the mission behind it, and why you think it's so important, especially now.
All right. Well, the mission statement somewhere in there says something about the 2A belongs to everyone. Gun sports are kind of an expensive hobby to get into as a sport.
Mm-hmm.
However, everyone has a right and should be carrying a gun, I believe. Georgia just became a constitutional carry state. I don't know, several months ago. Anyway, my price points are low. I teach a bunch of classes, but I teach a practical pistol and everyday carry course, which I keep it at a very low price point, and I put out a lot of information because I want guys who they're going to go buy a gun and they're going to carry the gun around.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure the heck better know how to use it.
I don't want any impediment to getting trained, right? I don't want cost to be a factor because he couldn't afford to go spend $500 on a class. So, and even if you go buy a piece of garbage gun, still go get training, man. Like that's where it started out. I want people out in the wild to be trained to carry the killing machine.
Mm-hmm.
Because if something goes down and some dude wants to, videos all over YouTube, man, people shooting the wrong folks or shooting themselves by accident, et cetera, et cetera. I want to be out there spreading good information so that people are at base level safe out in the wild with their firearms. Now, that said, I got tons of courses. I mean, we probably got 20 courses in our library. Some are non-live fire, some are more experience-based stuff, leadership, teamwork, stuff like that.
Yeah, you talk about new shooters to seasoned professionals. What's the main focus for that new group, right? They're new to it, right? First time gun owner, right? What are you taking them through related to? I mean, I'm sure it's everything from safety to here's the law, like here's what you can and can't do.
No, that's right. Yep. There's probably about a 2-hour classroom portion that talks about law, different, or at least a lot of resources. I'm not a lawyer, but right. I do take that piece from. I'm a member of USCCA. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they have a very good block of instruction on legal ramifications, stuff like that. So we teach that stuff for sure. Obviously, fundamentals, safety and handling, but once we get on the range, man, it's I expose new shooters to what some people might consider advanced stuff very early in the game. Because check this out, there is no advanced marksmanship, right? It's just application of the fundamentals. So, for instance, I don't know if you're familiar with a bill drill, right? That shoots 6 rounds as fast as possible. New shooters, that blows their mind. But what does it do? It immediately puts them in a mindset of what this gun, they understand the limitations of the gun immediately. And they understand that it's not going to jump out of their hand and flip over and shoot them in the face or whatever, whatever bizarre, irrational fears they might have about firearms. So it's kind of a baptism by fire. And, probably spend 6 hours roughly on the range so that you get a full day's work in the practical pistol course for sure.
You said something before I want to ask you about. You said the Second Amendment is for everyone. I feel like we're living in this wild time where it's only supposed to be for some people. And I guess I know why. Those in charge that like to get us all split up and mad at each other and fired up probably want to divide us. But I think there's something in your comments about that. Do you mind telling me just a little bit more about what you mean it's for everybody? I mean, I tend to agree with you, but
don't get me started on politics here on
but I'm not even saying so I get it, right? Like But what's the mindset of that, right? So tell me just the mindset of that a little bit.
All right. Well, first and foremost, I'm a libertarian by politics. All right. So, and I'm talking about classical liberalism, right? Mm-hmm. Like, your rights are your rights, regardless of who's sitting in office.
Yeah, there's an ethos of don't hurt other people and don't take their stuff. That's what I classify as classical libertarian.
That's it.
Classical liberalism, sure.
Yeah, and laissez-faire capitalism and whatnot. But if you ask progressives about the First Amendment, everything's absolute unless they don't like what you're saying. If you ask them about the Second Amendment, no, we don't need that. Only cops need guns. You and I have an inherent right to self-defense, right? Everybody agrees with that. But now everybody wants to dictate how you defend yourself, that's not bueno. Mm-hmm. Well, at least leveling that out a little bit is educational, right? If you're trained, and I don't like the word mandate, and I will not use the word mandate. As a responsible human, you should go get training.
That's right.
I don't think it's the government's role to mandate you go get training. A lot of states out there have mandatory doctrinal classes that you have to take to get a concealed permit, but that is clearly unconstitutional. To make you jump through hoops to exercise your rights. So, but when I say everybody, so I'm from Atlanta, right? There's a huge Black community in Atlanta. The population's probably somewhere around high 70% African American. One of my favorite guys to follow on Instagram is Madge Tour, and he calls it solutionaries, but he's about arming the hood. Right. Gun control is in its roots a racist concept. So the Black community gets a little marginalized in the gun industry. If you look on YouTube and look at all the pro shooters and this and that, the Black population is wildly underrepresented. Mm-hmm. I don't know why that is, but that's one piece of what I'm saying. Another thing we got here in Atlanta is a gigantic gay population. Now, I don't hate on gay people for being gay, right? I'm not down with the transgender in school, whatever weird thing that is. But if a gay guy comes to my course and says, "Hey, I wanted to be able to defend myself," I'm going to teach the guy to defend himself.
Yeah, let's rock and roll.
Just like I would teach you or Justin or anyone else. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, the Second Amendment is for everybody. That can at least be a common ground, right, for everybody with all these weird differences.
Yeah.
So if I can get everybody to agree that, yeah, I should be able to carry a gun, then we can agree on other things too.
Yeah, you should be able to, whether you choose to or not. That's your choice, right? Nobody's ever going to be forced in that position. But you've got a God-given right to protect yourself and your family. And
absolutely.
And all that. All right. So folks want to find out more. Maybe they want to attend an event, get some training, right? Come hang out with you guys. Send them, give them the info. Where can they go?
Okay. Yeah. OspreyShootingSolutions.com. That's it, man. And Osprey Shooting Solutions on Instagram. It's Osprey Shooting Solutions across the board. I got a YouTube channel that's kind of in development. Justin's helping me with videos in the future, by the way. But
he's just a helper, man.
Yeah.
Who do you look up to in this space, right? Who are you learning from? Who do you view as some of the best of the best?
The best of the best. One guy I've been following for a long time. I took a course with him when I was in the military. It was Mike Pannone, and he is a prior Marine, prior Green Beret, prior Delta guy, and got out and did all kind of organizational stuff with air marshals and other guys. He's a grandmaster USPSA shooter. His catchphrase is the magic is there is no magic. Mm. And I love that, man.
Got to put the work in.
He's a no nonsense guy.
Yeah.
He's a abrasive, gruff dude, but he tells it like it is, but it's no nonsense, real deal, no fluff. One of my catchphrases is no frills. Because when I was an infantryman, I traveled light, man. I didn't carry extra stuff. Mm-hmm. And I got the nickname of No Frills Mills because I'd be out there freezing my ass off. It'd be 17 degrees and I got a whoopee.
That's right.
Yeah. But Mike Pannone is one of the guys. There's a guy, Matt Pranka, who's also a former Delta guy, who's a pro shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And the similarities with the way they teach and what they teach is there's no fluff, there's no extra shit. Sorry, stuff.
I said the F word earlier. We should be fine.
Yeah. Okay. It's it's the fundamentals in action.
Yeah.
And watching these guys shoot, you understand there is no advanced. They make it look advanced, but it's just application of fundamentals. So those two guys in particular, you can't go wrong with former Delta guys in general, because they shoot hundreds of thousands of rounds throughout a career, millions possibly.
Yeah,
and
so
then
they know what's up.
Two prominent pro shooters I follow, and I'll leave it at that, is Ben Stoeger, there's a lot of controversy around him. He's been banned from USPSA for calling out some improprieties of the organization. But he's one of the best shooters out there, and he's a no-nonsense guy. And then JJ Racaza, who is like a little Filipino lightning bolt zipping around the friggin' stage. He's fast and furious, man. You cannot go wrong with those four dudes.
That's awesome, man. I think there's something in there about, and maybe this isn't your jam, right? Maybe you're listening to this, you're like, I don't ever intend on owning a gun. That's fine. It's your right and your ability. I think my hope is that if you're in that mindset, just be respectful of and remember why people are doing this, right? Why people are taking all this training, and that there are guys like Edgar out there that are making sure that those owners are sharpening their blade every day, every week, every month, whatever, so that they can be responsible, right? So that they can take care of them and theirs. And look, you never know when they might be able to protect you too. And it is a wild world we're living in now, man, where stuff is just popping up. And the more I think people can get trained to be ready, hopefully like insurance, hopefully you never have to use it.
That's right? What it is. That's all it is insurance. Yeah. So in the gun business, there's a lot of disciplines, right? Not everybody's training to be a USPSA Grandmaster. Mm-hmm. And competition intimidates a lot of average folks who, like, they maybe want to own a gun for protection, but they're not interested in running and gunning. And the answer to that is I concur. You don't have to go be a competition shooter, but the answer to that is that the hard skill is the hard skill. Putting your sight on target and pulling the trigger is the same, whether you're doing it in a competition or at the Waffle House parking lot at 3 a.m. So the skill is the same across the board. How you apply that skill depends on what you want to do with yourself. A lot of people just carry. They go to the range once a month and then they never shoot a competition their entire life, which is okay. Now, I would argue that unless you're doing some dry fire at the house, you probably need to practice a little more, but you don't have to do competition shooting. But the skill itself translates. It's the same in Afghanistan. It's the same in a USPSA match. It's the same at the Waffle House parking lot. Does
that competition training get you utilizing that firearm when your heart rate's pumping a little bit faster than it normally would be?
Yeah, but you can do that with push-ups. You can do that with anything. Now, here's the unknown. Here's the variable that you can't control. Is you've heard of fight, flight, or freeze response, mm-hmm. right? Mm-hmm. That's involuntary. That's the thing that happens that you have to train real hard to get that under control. There's a lot of psychology going on in there. So people who do all these courses with their kid on and they got all this stuff, if they don't ever train for you can't train for it.
It's an unknown. It's an unknown. You can't replicate.
How can I replicate taking your life? Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
So you can do problem solving under time, and that's fine. But the reality is when your life's really in danger, there's going to be some involuntary responses in there that you've either trained enough that you're confident in your skill and you ride that, or you haven't trained enough and that fear or fight or flight or whatever takes over and you haven't trained enough to mitigate it. So you just respond in a involuntary way.
Yep.
So much psychology. So the subconscious is a powerful place, man. more powerful than people give credit for. When it comes to shooting, the best way to mitigate that, man, is just be absolutely confident in your skill. And most people don't train to that level. Soldiers, special operators do.
Mm-hmm.
And USPSA guys, that's not replicate. Yeah, you got your heart rate's up a little bit, but that doesn't affect too much.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The real fear, that's what affects your behavior. So that's hard to train, man. But that leads me into a perfect thing. Scenario-based training. It's one of my favorite things to do. To me, it's the second most important thing other than being able to hit what you're shooting at. We got UTM guns, and we do 3 classes that are scenario-based, which puts you in stressful situations. And they're not even firearms courses. 2 of those courses, there's no guns whatsoever. One is a urban and rural long-range movement. And the scenario is you're evading some aggressors through Atlanta and up into Rome and into the woods in Rome. And you got to stay out overnight with minimal gear. You got to kind of work as a team. There's a lot of good stuff going on there. And that's sort of physical and a little bit of problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a huge course that is once a year, Surviving Captivity. And the gist of that course is international travel preparation, being ready to go. And I target church, missionaries, nonprofit, humanitarian organizations. Mm-hmm. And I mean like mid-level and low-level groups that don't have the money for security, don't have the money for training.
Sure.
So I target those
but could
groups.
Get into some pretty gnarly situations.
But could, yeah. I mean, there's missionaries been, yeah.
Yep.
So preparing for that, right? That's a very real academic thing. And then the scenario part of that is you spend 36 hours in captivity doing, things that make you reevaluate a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's real good. And
incredible.
Completely out of the comfort zone for anyone.
Yeah.
But especially, average civilians. And if you spend 36 hours in someone else's control, having uncomfortable things happen to you, even though it's a course, it still creates a little, thought process for you.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's an awesome one. No guns. Yeah, no guns.
Yeah, just learning skills though that you could use. Guys, go check him out. It's Osprey Shooting Solutions. He's Edgar No Frills Mills.
Yeah.
So
I got a t-shirt.
I love it, man. Yeah. Brother, keep doing what you're doing, man. It's great to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Always a pleasure. It's Edgar Mills. I'm Brian Jodas. That's been this episode of Pick Up the Six Podcast.